think that worked. That work? Yeah, it did. All right, there we go. Hi, Internet. All right. We've got 51 seconds till this goes live. I think you're all going to be very happy about what you see here because Cleric is just solid. It was always solid. Now it's better than it was. And we're going to go with the actual live reaction here. So here it is. It's got 34 seconds left on the countdown. So we're just going to dive right in. And then we can talk a little bit more about like what's going on and some other stuff after the fact. I've got the news about my car. We'll have some fun discussions after the fact. So I will answer that. Let's go ahead and let's just, you know what? For this time, we're just going to kind of roll right into it. So you're going to get it pretty much live, and then I will tell you all about what's going on with me.
Hello everyone, today we are talking about clerics. You know, those folks that keep you alive. Playing new things in all the classes and the subclasses. That is also true for clerics.
Phandelver and below tonight will be entirely dependent on whether or not I have to work tonight's planned night shift. That's why I'm here right now. I'm supposed to be working at 7. If the weather doesn't materialize, then I will be streaming Phandelver. If it does, we won't.
One of the things that we wanted to make sure we did with the cleric, which is also a very popular class, is, as we've done with all of the classes, protect their core identity while looking for ways to amp up the fun, particularly for clerics and others
move us up to
who
1.25.
focus sometimes on healing, although of course many of us have played clerics who are all about smiting or something other than healing. But we wanted to make sure that anyone who is focusing on healing in the game really could feel good about it. And
multiple clerics showing off. Looks like maybe spiritual weapon here and maybe some healing over here.
that's why we talked in our video about spells, about the buffs to many of the game's healing spells, and so clerics in particular are going to really feel that improvement and feel like that if they decide to spend their turn or part of their turn in battle helping their friends or themselves get back into the fight, we're hoping they're going to feel far better about dedicating their playtime to that healing activity. Now,
And again, I think we can all agree that clerics were very strong, and I think they're only stronger now.
Comes to the class itself, right away at first level, people are going to get a brand new feature called Divine Order. Both the Druid and the Cleric now have this feature at first level that allows them to decide if they want to go more in the spellcasting direction or lean a little bit more into the armor and weapon direction. Now, Clerics and Druids both have at the baseline sort of decent weapon and armor capability and are very solid spellcasters. So this choice is really a choice of emphasis or of spice. Whichever one you choose, you're still going to have, again, decent armor and weapons as well as very formidable spellcasting. If you decide to go in Divine Order with the new Protector option, it means right at first level you're going to start with proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor.
And this is good. We saw a lot of back and forth with the other domains where some of them would give you martial weapons, some would give you heavy armor, some would give you both. And it seems like, and I think this has pretty much been said across the board, and if not, I'll say it here. Currently, outside of the feats, like, they don't want, it doesn't seem like they want like subclasses or like species to grant proficiencies. It's like, that's not entirely the case, but like in this instance, they'd rather pull out the weapon proficiency aspects from the subclasses and kind of build that into the base character so that you're not making that competing choice. And we kind of saw a similar thing with the Druid. And I kind of like this concept of, making that kind of the choice. Do you want to be the more casty kind or the more martial kind? And I like that. It is, we see it on the Cleric and the Druid only, though. I wouldn't mind if this had expanded out to other classes or a concept of this for other classes, right? Do you want to be more of a this kind of caster versus a this kind of caster, you know, split it up? Because bards don't really have an option like this, right? That they have to kind of choose magic or martial, even though they kind of feel like they fit the same sort of tier of caster. But I don't know. I kind of like this. I wish it's funny because when you look at all of the classes across the board, it's like some of them feel like they got a lot more, not necessarily love, but like the way the design was like, oh, we really had a cool through line we wanted for these, and then we just don't have that for some of the other ones.
This is how you can make the classic first edition cleric decked out in heavy armor and wielding a mace. But we've also acknowledged that over the decades, many clerics have instead leaned more in a kind of robe-wearing, divine magic wielding aesthetic direction. And so the thaumaturge option supports that aesthetic by giving you an extra cantrip and also making it so that, and again, this is similar to what we did in the Druid, buffing some of your ability checks with a bonus equal to your wisdom modifier. And in the case of the cleric, the ability checks that get buffed are your intelligence, arcana, and religion checks, making it so that the thaumaturge, even if their intelligence isn't super high, can tap into their divine magic to give them a sense of information about either general magic in the form of arcana or about religion.
Perfect.
Now, in spellcasting, which is also at first level, there is an important change there where now clerics, every time they level up, can swap out one of their cantrips. Now,
and we've seen this kind of across the board, right? This kind of concept now that everybody has the option when they level up to swap a cantrip, so you're not permanently locked into that. It's a more permanent choice than some of the other kind of things that we've had, but it's nice that, you know, if you find that you took like, or a cleric, right? So you find you took like Sacred Flame as your cantrip, and you find that you never use Sacred Flame, or you would rather have the extra boost in damage from something like a Toll the Dead, at least you're not locked into that, right? If you took like Mending and you've never used Mending and you're like level 5, maybe when you hit level 6, swap Mending for something slightly more useful. I mean, clerics do have a very small pool of cantrips compared to a lot of other classes. Pretty lacking in the damage department, and I don't believe that clerics got any sort of attacking cantrip. I'm a very firm believer that everybody should have, every class that uses cantrips, rather, should have at least one attacking cantrip where you make a spell attack roll, and at least one saving throw option where the enemy makes a saving throw. I've said this before a bunch of times. I personally, more often than not, prefer attack roll spells because I feel like the my fate is in my own hands, right? I'm rolling the die that determines whether I hit or miss, rather than you as the DM rolling the saving throw to decide whether the effect goes off or not. Again, cantrips for the most part, especially for a cleric, you're not going to be dealing half damage here. So you're, you know, it's kind of like I did a thing and nothing happens, but there's always like that, probably that little thing in the back of your brain, which is like, did they actually roll high enough to not take that damage? Especially if the DM's rolling behind a screen and not like openly in front of you. So I prefer the attacking option of rolling it. Cause again, like I said, my fate's in my own hands, which is why I feel that every class with spells should have at least one of, or the, you know, at least one's attack and at least one save. But you look at like the arcane casters and they've got like 5 or 6 different attacks. Whereas I don't even think the cleric has one. If clerics in fact get Starry Wisp, which is an attacking cantrip, then I rescind my comment. But either way, that's still cool. Starry Wisp is a cool cantrip, so I hope that's true.
Now you can say, oh, okay, I'm not using this cantrip as much as I thought, and so you can change. At second level, clerics get their iconic Channel Divinity feature, just as before. It still includes the option to turn undead, which again goes all the way back to first edition of clerics channeling their divine might to drive back the forces of undeath.
They should leave those undead alone. It's not fair.
But we have also now added a brand new channel divinity option for all clerics called Divine Spark. And this is a really fun channel divinity option where the cleric decides if they're going to channel this raw divine power either to harm someone or help them. So you can either deal damage with it or heal somebody with it. And we did this because looking over not only the subclasses for the cleric in this book, but as well as the other subclasses that have come out for the cleric over the years, clerics, depending on subclass choice, have had sort of varying use for their channel divinity. Like if you
Very true.
Are in a campaign with few or no undead, turn undead does you no good.
Yeah, right.
And then some subclasses have channel divinity options that are useful every session, and then other subclasses have channel divinity options that are useful less frequently.
This is very true. And I like this. This is one of the big changes that we saw in an early Unearthed Arcana that seems to have made its way through, is this Divine Spark, right? Damage or healing, another option to utilize your channel divinity outside of just turn undead. So I really like this because it is very true, right? I've played a handful of clerics in games, and for some, like I'd say a light domain cleric and a tempest domain cleric, those opportunity, you are constantly given opportunities to burn your channel divinity. And others maybe not as much. Like, it's funny, you wouldn't even think like life domain cleric would be one you wouldn't use too often. But if your party's doing really well and not finding themselves below half hit points very frequently, whether it's because you're proactively healing or they're just tanky and able to avoid stuff, you might not get to use your channel divinity feature as the life domain cleric because everybody's got to be below half hit points to make it work.
With that reality in mind, we created Divine Spark to give every cleric, regardless of subclass, a channel divinity option that is likely to be useful in every single session of play, because pretty much every session, at least one point, you're going to want to deal damage or heal somebody, unless you're having a very peaceful shopping montage session, right?
That's fair.
Unless, you know, the cleric discovers that the shopkeep is undead and they need to drive them away with turn undead. Now, that classic option, turn undead, it itself has been redesigned. As much as we enjoy the classic turn undead of the undead who are affected scampering far away, we wanted this to be a bit less disruptive for the cleric, because it is often not useful for the cleric for the undead to now be half a mile away when it runs out.
Right, and spread around map, yeah.
Exactly. So turn undead still, you know, if it affects an undead creature, it still shuts them down in terms of, you know, being able to do much of use for them, but no longer has them scrambling from, you know, here to the next town. And we found that not only in the Unearthed Arcana process, but also in our own playtests, that this new version of Turn Undead is a lot of fun.
And this is like a debuff or damage, or?
So what it does now is the undead creature is incapacitated and frightened for 1 minute. And it does try to move as far as it can from you on its turns, but it's no longer dashing.
Yeah, okay.
And it also is, it's clearer with the rest of the system how it's behaving, because it has now the incapacitated condition as well as the frightened condition. And those two things were implied before, and now it's explicit.
Okay.
The new version of Turn Undead is then buffed later at level 5 by another new feature called Sear Undead. And with this feature, you now have the option, when you use Turn Undead, to blast the undead creatures that you're turning with radiant energy and deal damage to them. This is a way for you to have your Turn Undead have an offensive capability without requiring the undead to hit a particular challenge rating threshold to be destroyed by your Turn Undead. So the 2014 version of Turn Undead, when you got to higher level, would just simply destroy certain undead creatures. And what we found is the problem with that is it was this very kind of all or nothing thing. And then that also meant that you gained no benefit against creatures that were not within that very specific challenge rating range. We replaced that primarily because we wanted to give you a buff that you were happy to have no matter what the CR was of the undead creature. And so now you have this ability to, like, you don't have to worry about what the CR is. Once you have it, you have the option of blasting it with radiant damage. And the advantage of this new feature is eventually this radiant damage will get high enough that you will still pretty much automatically destroy very low CR undead. So you will often, particularly if you have lucky damage rolls for the radiant damage, still incinerate the undead that you're turning. But even when you don't do that, you're still going to be able to pump out some radiant damage, even against that high CR Lich.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it like the chat saying, like they said here, like you guys are saying, it's you'll still likely destroy lower level undead if you roll well. So you're really not losing anything. You're just dealing extra damage and getting the opportunity to deal damage to higher CR undead, because you can do it you could do it regardless, right? So I don't know what the damage is. I forget what the Unearthed Arcana had it at. It was like a couple D8s or something like that. I'll pull it up over here while we talk, but yeah, it's just a nice feature to just tack on some extra damage that they didn't have to do, right? They could have left it alone, but this does just make it that much more viable. Let's go ahead and pull up the Cleric. As someone said, I think it was originally called Smite Undead, was the original name of it. Yeah, okay, here it is. So I don't know if this is the same version that ended up here, but it's like when you use Turn Undead, you could do a number of D8s equal to your Wisdom modifier. Each undead that fails its saving throw against the use of Turn Undead takes a radiant damage equal to the roll. So I'm not sure if that stayed the same. They might have switched this to maybe the proficiency bonus. We'll check and see if there's a D&D Beyond article on this. But, even at level 5, you could be looking at something like 4d8 damage with Turn Undead. Maybe even 5d8 if you rolled really well. So I like the change a lot. I think it's a solid change. I think it works well, and it just adds more versatility there. So
Perfect. Makes sense.
Now at level 7 in the Cleric, we also have a new feature called Blessed Strikes. And Blessed Strikes is a replacement for two different features that appeared previously in subclasses. Cleric subclasses in the past tended to have either a feature called Divine Strike or one called Potent Spellcasting.
Mm-hmm.
Divine Strike pushed the Cleric toward weapon use, and Potent Spellcasting.
I thought this was the one from Tasha's Cauldron, right, where it gave you the opportunity for either or. Maybe I'm wrong.
It's in the name, buffed the Cleric Spellcasting, specifically the Cleric's Cantrips. And because we now let you at first level decide which of those directions you want to lean in, we wanted you to, then following on from that, get to make a choice between Divine Strike and Potent Spellcasting at level 7, rather than automatically giving you one of those as part of a particular subclass. And we found that doing it the old way kind of pigeonholed certain subclasses in ways that wasn't always how the players wanted to play that subclass.
It definitely was noticeable. I think one of the more noticeable ones is the Trickery domain Cleric, the 2014 Trickery domain. It seemed like the options, and again, they've kind of addressed it here, right? There were very much two kind of camps of clerics, right? There was the more magic-y caster style clerics, or the more martial weapon style clerics. And when you looked at the Trickery domain, its spell lists and all of its abilities were very much caster style, but it got Divine Strike, which kind of makes you think it's supposed to be more melee. So that didn't really work, in my opinion. Like, there were some issues where they went back and forth, and it could have been either one. And some were very clearly one way versus the other. So making this just now a choice that you can make, on top of the fact that you get the choice of, do you want to be more martial or more castery? And there's nothing stopping you from mixing and matching, right? You could take the weapon and armor proficiency at level 1 and then take potent spellcasting at level 7 and get wisdom modifier to your cantrips. So I think it's pretty solid. And again, this is what I'm talking about, where I like this, give people more of these dual options.
You might have decided that a particular subclass got Divine Strike rather than Potent Spellcasting, but the player who chose that subclass might decide, but I'm not interested in wearing armor and being in melee. I want to actually hang back, and would really have enjoyed having Potent Spellcasting instead. Yeah. So with that in mind, we've put the power in the player's hands to decide which of those directions that you go in. We also, this is a case where we have a note in the feature itself that if you happen to take the new version of the Cleric, but wed it to a subclass from an older book, you do not get both the potent spellcasting or divine strike from the subclass as well as whatever you choose from the base class. You just get one.
Perfect.
And that's explained right here in the cleric itself.
Okay.
Now,
I didn't
when we
notice
get
that,
to
but I'd have to
level
check.
10, we have a new version of Divine Intervention. Now, previously, Divine Intervention was a style of game design that I sometimes refer to as Mother May I game design, where the player basically had to ask the DM's permission for something to happen. And also, this was locked behind a die roll that would determine whether or not your feature even did anything. So our goal with the new Divine Intervention is we wanted to give the cleric certainty that their class feature would actually do something. And so in the new design, you just simply use it, and you choose any cleric spell of level 5 or lower that doesn't require a reaction to cast, and you cast it. It's that simple. And then you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So what this means is once you reach level 10, you as a cleric, regardless of what cleric spells you have prepared, have in your back pocket the ability to pick any cleric spell of 5th level or lower and decide, I'm casting that now. So it still serves the function that Divine Intervention had before, which is sort of fishing for a divine get-out-of-jail-free card. And I think the feedback we got on this was very positive. And what's also really nice about it is when you cast the spell, you don't expend a spell slot, and you do not need material components. This means, yes, you could choose Raise Dead, which is a 5th level spell, and cast it, calling on Divine Intervention to raise someone from death. And we designed this very specifically to make that happen, because what else feels like Divine Intervention than bringing back somebody from the dead?
You are going.
This is definitely, I think, a good change. Now, listen, I've played a couple of clerics. I've ran games for a bunch of clerics. And one of my first games, it went to pretty high level. We're talking into like the late teens before the TPK. And one of the characters was a cleric. And when I tell you, the amount of times that this player hit Divine Intervention, it's ridiculous. I mean, I would say he had a good 85% chance success rate with his Divine Intervention. So for him, this change would be a downgrade because it had the original kind of, again, as they mentioned, Mother May I, I would often say, what are you looking to do? And he would say whatever his kind of like a general concept of what he was looking to do. And sometimes I would have it trigger a spell, right? Like if we're looking to find somebody, maybe it triggers find the path and they can go do it that way. But a lot of the times it was in a very similar kind of wish style mentality where it was basically, okay, what do you want to do? And they would give me kind of a concept, and then I would have to figure it out. And I was fine with that but I got used to it because he would hit those rolls so frequently. This kind of being a more guaranteed and the concept of a 5th level spell with no components is much more usable. Now, I don't recall if they said it had to be a cleric spell or if it could be any spell. But I do agree that the concept of just having like essentially a freebie Raise Dead in your back pocket without needing the diamonds is very much feels like a Divine Intervention situation and is pretty useful. And I'm pretty sure this new version here, at least the 10th level version, allows you to do this once per long rest. I could be wrong on that, but at least that's what it was in Unearthed Arcana. It was once per long rest, which is very powerful when you think about the frequency of how often you could do it.
To ruin the diamond economy in D&D. All these NPCs that sell diamonds.
Okay, any cleric spell. There you go. Thank you.
Diamonds are just
in all of their shops outside all the temples in D&D cities.
Exactly 500 gold piece worth of diamonds.
That's right. That's right. Now, at level 14, we improve Blessed Strikes, and so whichever option you chose earlier at level 7, Divine Strike or Potent Spellcasting, it gets even better. And then finally, at level 20, we have Greater Divine Intervention, which now lets you choose the Wish spell. And the Wish spell, as the Divine Intervention that you're reaching out for, and gives you all of the magical flexibility that Wish gives a spellcaster. And the Wish spell has been expanded in the spell chapter. It has several new built-in options that do not risk you triggering the
monkey's paw.
the fatigue that Wish can impose upon a person.
Yeah.
And it also has further guidance in the spell of what happens to you if you try to mess with gods, or even worse, with the Lady of Pain.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call this broken at all, because it's giving you, it is not, at least if you go off the Unearthed Arcana 6, right? It is Greater Divine Intervention. When you choose your Divine Intervention, you can choose Wish. So normally you could choose a 5th level spell for free once per long rest, but you can choose to do sort of this improved version where you get to cast the Wish spell. It does, however, say you can't do it again until you finish 2d4 long rests. So you're locking yourself out. But again, other classes have access to 9th level spells at this point, although technically this would allow you to cast 2 9th level spells in a day, which does break the general power economy. The only thing that I do enjoy is that you actually are immune to the stress caused by using Wish. So, right, Wish is normally like there's a stress chance was a 33% or 25% or something chance that you will never be able to cast Wish ever again. That is obviously you're immune to that, as this is you beseeching your god for divine intervention. So that makes sense. Yeah. So anyway, also, hey Dan, I saw you in there with the long yo comment. I miss you, buddy. Hopefully I'll see you at Gen Con. And then, like they said, they did give you more options for the Wish spell and kind of explain it out a little bit. To give you like a little more guidance on how things work. So, yeah, you could technically cast 2 9th level spells in a day as a 20th level cleric, one with your 9th level spell slot, and then one using Greater Divine Intervention, which is powerful. I'm sure there's other ways that other people could tweak to get extra 9th level spells, but still. Oh, bummer, Dan. I'm going to miss you, buddy. Well, I guess a True Dungeon just freed up a slot then, so have to see how that goes. I'm going to blame Alchemy, but that's neither here nor there. Let's keep going with the video. See what else they have to say. Wish can't replicate 9th level spells. It's only 8th or lower. That is correct, but you could still cast a 9th level spell with your... oh, wait a minute. Hang on. Let's just reread this. When you Divine Intervention, when you choose the Wish spell, you select that as a spell. Yeah, it doesn't. This, because it's using Divine Intervention, it does. I don't see anything in here that makes me think you're spending the spell slot. So you could use your 9th level spell slot as a cleric to do 9th level spell slot things, and then basically get a freebie here using Greater Divine Intervention. That's kind of how it always was. It was hard, you know, at level 20, you could just always trigger Greater Divine Intervention. And it was, again, very much up to the DM to decide how you interpret that. But because of the fact that it could be interpreted in a variety of ways, depending on the power level and what your DM allows, it was essentially giving you more or less the benefit of a 9th level spell, just not codifying it as such. So, yeah. Oh, Zachary Lowry, True Dungeon is an absolute blast. I love it. I have so many tickets. I'm going to do so many runs this time. I'm going to have a blast. True Dungeon is just so much fun. But anyway, let's... basically, what I'm saying is they didn't take away the functionality of Divine Intervention with this update. They just made it less... kind of loosey-goosey on how it works and used the Wish spell, which again, the Wish spell is kind of loosey-goosey in how it works with, you know, it kind of having the sort of, again, they mentioned the monkey's paw sort of aspect to it, but you also are not having to worry about some of the detriments of it by having this bit about being immune to the stress of the Wish spell. And again, you could always just use it to replicate a 5th spell or a 5th level spell or lower to do something else from the cleric list. So I'm fine with this change. It's basically you're not... The only thing is the 10th level version is giving you more reliable versions of magic, essentially an extra 5th level spell slot. And the 20th level version more or less feels the same to me. So let's go ahead and keep going.
Like our other dedicated spellcasting classes, the spell list has been expanded, not only because of new spells that are in the book, like Summon Celestial, but also because of spells that were already in the game in 2014.
I wonder if he's going to talk about any of the cool... There's one specific spell change that I really want to talk about. Two, actually. But I don't know if he's going to mention it.
That clerics now have access to. And our cleric subclasses definitely also then get to make use of the bolstered spell selection because of their domain spells. So shall we dive into the life domain?
Yeah, let's get into the life domain. This is kind of the classic cleric.
The life domain cleric is meant to be the preeminent healer in the game.
It is basically the same, more or less.
I often like to tell people that if they really love playing a healer and they like the aesthetic of the cleric, the life domain is fantastic. You really cannot go wrong choosing this if you want to be a character who's all about helping other people. We took the really excellent features in this subclass and we fine-tuned them, altering some of the spell selection in the domain spell list so that the life domain cleric would be even more on theme.
They didn't say anything. They did say improved blessed strikes at 14. They did say that. They didn't talk about what it was, but they did say that you are getting that. If it follows the Unearthed Arcana, it was an extra D8 for Divine Strike. And for potent spellcasting, it was the ability to, when you cast a cantrip or deal damage, give some folks some temporary hit points. I don't know if this is still... I think this is still... They mentioned that this is still there. To what degree? I'm pretty sure Divine Strike's probably still going to be the same, just bumping it up by a D8. But I'm not sure off the top of my head, and they didn't mention what the final version of potent spellcasting is. Again, in Unearthed Arcana 6, 9th level, you still had Commune. I'm pretty sure they're still going to keep that in there, but they didn't mention it specifically here.
In terms of their healing prowess. And we've even done subtle tweaks that people might not notice immediately. Like, for instance, Preserve Life now actually works on undead and constructs.
Oh, fantastic.
The fact that a number of healing spells did not work on undead and constructs actually created a number of design headaches for benevolent undead or constructs that might be in a player's group, either because they summoned them or they became undead but are still, heroic, or there are constructs.
Yeah, we ran into this with the Reborn lineage at the time.
Exactly. And so people will notice that not just in Preserve Life, but many places in the player's handbook where before certain healing effects didn't work on undead and constructs, that has largely been removed. And instead, when the monster manual comes out, people will find that certain monsters, particularly monsters that are made of like shadow stuff from the negative energy plane, we are exploring it being a feature of the monster themselves. It isn't even that they can't be healed, it's that they're actually harmed by healing.
Oh, wow. We're going old school. We're going backwards here with our healing spells dealing damage, possibly. Interesting. Okay. I like this. If this does make its way through, I'm a huge fan of this. This is a big deal. No, my cup of tea. It was not. They did not have that in. There were some things, like they mentioned here, creatures of shadow, like had vulnerability to radiant damage, but didn't have like this healing damage hurt them thing. What they're saying here is, and it kind of makes some sense, right? So healing is generally a positive energy plane thing. So creatures are made of shadow are typically from the negative energy plane. So what they're saying here, and then it sounds, I hope that this goes over well, because it sounds like they probably haven't fully locked in what they're going to do with that. Because again, they do have till February to finalize the monster manual. But what was I going to say? Right. So previously, as mentioned, healing spells like Cure Wounds, if you look up the version in the 2014 Player's Handbook, basically says this feature does not work on constructs or undead. And they're saying they've basically removed that from the spell as it stands currently, but they're looking to add the concept of whether things can't be healed or possibly even whether they're harmed by it will just be a function of the creature's stat block. And I think that's actually probably a little cleaner, right? Because if you want to say that most creatures, most undead could be healed by Cure Wounds, but a certain subsect can't, it makes more sense to file that away as something on the stat block as opposed to trying to find the wording for that in the spell itself. And I do hope they keep this concept of negative versus positive energy and, healing spells being able to harm. That's huge for things like bonus action, healing word to deal like 2d4 damage. That's pretty nuts. I hope that does make it through because that is such a cool thing, giving so much more versatility to anybody with healing spells.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
And so that actually is allowing us to bring back some flavor that has existed in earlier editions of healers being able to turn their healing spells on certain kind of fell creatures. But for that, people will have to wait for the new monster manual.
I'm excited.
That's a great change.
But in the meantime, you will also be able to restore life to, say, because again, I know you as the ever lover of warlocks.
Yes.
If the warlock has a skeleton in the group, the cleric can now heal their friend's skeleton.
I will laugh. That is perfect.
Yes, so it does. Yeah, so it does sound like the life domain clerics would deal more damage to undead because of their when you cast a healing spell, it heals extra amount. Same thing with preserve life, that channel divinity that just does a burst of healing. That could be a burst of harm, almost similar to a light domain cleric. A lot of cool stuff there.
Brings us to the light domain, another popular subclass.
In theory, if that's true, if it follows old school mentality, then necrotic damage should heal those undead by that same token. Whether or not they end up doing that finally in the final printing remains to be seen. But in my opinion, yes, if you're going to do with healing magic is going to hurt them, that or healing. Well, see, that's the thing. Healing isn't a damage type. It's just an amount of healing. You could make the argument that necrotic damage should heal them, and I agree with that too, and I'd be fine with it.
As for the cleric?
The light domain has had quite a bit of revision within it. Part of that was based on us wanting to make it a little less one note and being all about fire.
What's wrong with that?
Partly because the light domain has always been meant to represent sort of divine illumination.
Yeah.
Which fire is certainly a fun expression of that.
Right.
But it's not the fire domain, it's the light domain.
Yeah.
And so we've preserved some of the, tasty fiery bits. So, don't worry, Fireball is still here.
Fireball's still there, for people wondering.
But we wanted to also bring in some spells in the domain list that are about vision, about, and I mean sort of metaphorically about vision. And so there's some divination spells here that are about wiping away falsehood, that sort of thing. And so that's why, you'll see things here like scrying and see invisibility, that sort of thing. Arcane Eye, these are here. We also made it so that the level 3 warding flare feature is usable right away, whether you're the person being targeted or
this
somebody
is a nice
else.
change.
It used to be you had to wait to a higher level
I like this change a lot.
have the I help my friend version of it. You now get that right away. Then later at level 6, when you get improved warding flare, when you use warding flare to protect somebody, you now also can give them temporary hit points. And you also now regain all uses of warding flare whenever you finish a short or a long rest.
That is wildly different than the Unearthed Arcana. It used to be called Revealing Light in the Unearthed Arcana. If we look at this, it was called Revealing Light. And it was just you can do see invisibility. And that was basically it. Now they're switching it back to improved warding flare, but now you're able to give temporary hit points and get all benefits of this back on a short or long rest, which is wild, and I love that. Look out, we're solar flaring all over the place, boys. This is what I'm talking about.
It's fantastic.
So the Light Domain Cleric is going to be able to use their signature ability, Warding Flare, more often, and it's even more potent than it was before.
Love that.
We've also
Love that
taken a look
change.
at Corona of Light, and we've now made it so that it imposes disadvantage on saving throws against your Radiance of the Dawn, in addition to any spells that deal fire or radiant damage. We wanted there to be more internal synergy here because we didn't want it to just benefit your spells, but then you have your Channel Divinity option to just emit a whole bunch of light and have it not benefit. So this also is a theme you and I have returned to in these videos of more synergy, more feeling like you can combine your abilities with your friends' abilities, but also, very importantly, combine your own abilities with each other.
A lot of good synergy
in
here.
new ways. And I'm excited to see how people combine things that we haven't even imagined yet.
Yeah, that is. I'm doing a lot of like combing through this book already and trying to come up with different combinations. That's part of the fun.
Now, next up we have the Trickery domain.
I love the Trickery domain. This is one of the best. I love this subclass.
I did not like the Trickery domain in 2014 because I thought it was pretty weak because it didn't really know what it wanted to do. But let's see what the updates are. I had done a fixing the Trickery domain video, but let's see what they did.
The theme of it, and this is, the spell list was always fantastic for the Trickery domain, but now the functionality of like the keystone abilities are really, really good.
And the Trickery domain in many ways is the foil to the Light domain. Many of the subclass quartets in the book are often actually two duos.
Yeah.
And in the Cleric, the Trickery domain, which is all about illusion and sort of pranks,
Deception,
and being the trickster, is the counter to the light of revelation, seeing everything as it really is. And then similarly, the Life domain Cleric has its foil in this class in the form of the War domain Cleric.
The Death domain is not.
One being all about restoring vitality to people, and the other about destroying things. And so, the Cleric, we have this fun axis going on with these four subclasses. Now, the Trickery domain, as you said, got some really nice updates. And it starts right away in Blessing of the Trickster, which now the Cleric can actually use on themselves, which they used to not be able to. And it used to last just for an hour, but now it lasts until the end of your next long rest.
Oh, wow.
Which is very powerful.
Which is a really nice way to ensure that people can use this for maybe extended infiltrations. Particularly if the Cleric uses it on somebody else, and it wouldn't be around to, in the past, refresh it after it wore off after an hour.
Oh, yeah, that's
Very
very
strong.
good point,
So Invoke Duplicity, which is of course, the signature ability of this subclass, got improved in a number of ways, in both the base feature as well as in the improvements that come later at level 17. One is you can now summon up your illusory duplicate as a bonus action instead of an action.
So much better.
And you do not have to concentrate on it anymore.
So
Thank you.
Just gonna. Yeah, that's a huge improvement. That is the biggest improvement there. First of all, bonus action activation, allowing you to do this and still cast a spell in the same turn. That is wildly powerful. So much benefit there. And just straight up yeeting concentration out of here to make it that much more beneficial. You are a Cleric. Concentration is like Clerics and Druids, right? It is concentration central. You will have Spirit Guardians up more often than not because that's just how it works when you're a Cleric, right? So to not be able to Spirit Guardians and Invoke Duplicity was kind of dumb. So now see this. Ahmed, I didn't say it because people were complaining about me commenting about it last time. But yes, Every time I pause and make that look, you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, we got rid of concentration on this, which is a huge quality of life update. This is it's not a new class, but it almost feels like one with just the changes to Blessing of the Trickster and Invoke Duplicity. Massive quality of life, a much more playable class now.
Because that was so difficult, yeah.
You are absolutely right. Laura Bailey somewhere is loving life. Jester is head over heels for this, 100%.
The combination before of it taking your entire action and you having to concentrate on it meant you were in some ways being shut down in two ways. You were spending a whole turn bringing it out, and then you couldn't at the same time have any of the clerics' really nice concentration spells going simultaneously.
Just like we were talking about.
So we wanted to address that when we revisited this subclass, so that the subclass felt like it was playing nice with the rest of the class, and not shutting your own class down through its use.
And again, that is a lot of the change in design is what you want to do during a turn happens so much faster.
Yes. In the higher level improved duplicity up at level 17, that used to create multiple duplicates. You now just have one duplicate. But what we've now done is that your duplicate now assists not just you, but also your allies when it comes to conferring advantage on attack rolls.
Yeah.
And when the illusion vanishes, it now heals. You can have it heal somebody next to it. We wanted, again, this illusion to be more cleric-y, so that it truly felt like you're not just a trickster, you are a trickster cleric. And so that.
So I believe this was in Unearthed Arcana 6, right? They didn't talk at all about this one, Trickster's Magic here. But we'll take a look at what Invoke Duplicity does, right? Because this looks to be the same. Non-concentration. You can cast spells as though you were in the illusion space. This is big. Distract when you are when both you and your illusion are within 5 feet of a creature. You have advantage on attack rolls against that creature, and then you could move it. Trickster's Magic, they didn't touch on what the 6th level feature is, which was here. If you cast a spell at the Illusion School using a spell slot, you can change that spell's casting time to a bonus action. Not sure if that's still there. But then here is Improved Duplicity. When you create it, you can teleport it up to 120 feet rather than 30 feet. And when you move it, you can now move it up to 60 feet. In addition, when you and your allies make attack rolls against a creature within 5 feet of the illusion, the attack rolls have advantage. Again, recognize, I don't know if the teleportation increase is still there. They didn't mention that. But recognize that you could put this next to an enemy if you have a rogue in the party, and the other rogue can just be constantly having advantage on attack rolls, triggering sneak attack because of your duplicate's presence. And then again, here it was when it ends, choose a creature within 5 feet of it that regains a number of hit points equal to your cleric level. This coming online at 17 is a flat out 17 HP heal if it remained the same way. So again, just really great quality of life and improvements here for the Trickery domain, making it a much more playable class. Not that it wasn't previously, but a lot more synergy here.
That's why we brought in more of this element of you being able to assist your team in addition to assisting yourself.
There's another really juicy add-on to this ability.
Yes. Between level 3 and 17, there is now a brand new feature. And that is, whenever you take the bonus action to create the illusion, you can teleport, swapping places with the illusion. And this not only gives you some really fun mobility, but it makes it so that the tricksy cleric can mess with enemies even more, because if suddenly you're swapping positions, they think you're over there, but you're actually over here.
Yeah.
Nice. And then on top of it, we modified the domain spell list, and that's something we did in all of them to try to make the list of spells that you have from this subclass as thematic and as fun as possible. So finally, we have the war domain.
Yeah.
The war domain has been improved across the board. One of the ways that...
Another one that just suffered. When you looked at the Forge domain cleric, what Forge domain got compared to War domain, Forge or War domain just felt like it was purely just a product of the time in which it was created, whereas Forge had a lot of like similar things, just improved overall.
You'll see that immediately is in Guided Strike. You can now, right from the start, use this to benefit other people. It used to be that you could only use it on yourself when you first got it. And this is for people who don't remember, this is the channel Divinity where you can just give yourself a gigantic +10 to hit.
Yeah.
And people have seen Omen Drawn do this many times in Acquisitions Incorporated.
Yes.
But you had to wait till a much higher level to be able to use it on other people.
Yeah.
Now you can use it on yourself or other people right away.
Oh, wow, okay.
And
Really
we
good.
did this similar to some of the changes we made in the Trickery domain. We did this so that this would be more cleric-y right from the start. The whole cleric class is about interactions with other party members, because even if you're a cleric who isn't focusing on healing, clerics still have a number of abilities that otherwise buff their friends, and so we're always looking for ways to make sure that even when clerics might be leaning more in a sort of damage-dealing direction, that there still is an interaction element when it comes to their buddies. Now, the advantage of doing this also means we free up a class feature slot where we can then put in something new, so that you're not having an entire feature eaten up by now you can use this on your friends.
Yeah.
So there's a double advantage to us making a change like this. We also, in the War Priest ability, which you get at 3rd level along with Guided Strike and your domain spells, we have made it so that you can now make an unarmed strike with the bonus action attack, not just a weapon strike.
That's a
This is
small
actually
adjustment.
something we've done in a number of places in the New Player's Handbook, where previous abilities that only worked with weapons now also work with unarmed strikes. We're doing this not only for the sake of multi-classing, but also because we know that people, regardless of what class they have, sometimes like the fantasy of playing an unarmed character. And so we wanted to support that. We have also made it so that you regain the uses of your War Priest ability when you complete a short or a long rest. So you're also going to be able to use this more often. At
that's the
level
wisdom
6
modifier
with
attack
the
as a
War
bonus
God's
action.
Blessing, we reuse the old name, but in terms of functionality, it is brand new because now we've made it so that you can burn Channel Divinity uses to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon. We decided we wanted to make the War Domain Cleric the type of cleric who has the easiest time casting two of the most iconic low-level war-themed cleric spells, Shield of Faith and Spiritual Weapon. One defensive and the other one offensive.
Nice
and so that
changes.
means that the War Domain Cleric, more than any other cleric, will be able to shield their allies or bring out that spectral weapon to bash foes easier than any other kind of cleric.
This is a nasty spell list, too. Steel, Wind, Strike is in here.
Oh yeah, the spell list has been revised in ways that are really exciting. So the Steel Wind Strike, this is a great example of how all the domain lists and other subclass spell lists have benefited from the expanded spell chapter. The Steel Wind Strike wasn't in the 2014 Player's Handbook, but when we made the decision to have this really spicy ranger spell appear in this book, we thought, oh, this is perfect for the War Domain Cleric as well.
Yeah.
Before we move on to their capstone, I should also mention that if the War Cleric uses their Channel Divinity to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon, it doesn't require concentration.
Oh, nice.
And if you cast it, again, using your Channel Divinity rather than a spell slot. So extra spicy. Finally, Avatar of Battle even has been tweaked in that before you got resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, but only those damage types when dealt by non-magical weapons. We've removed that non-magical weapon part so that now you just simply gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, meaning that this new version of the war.
One thing, they may have just, hang on, let's just check that one more thing, because everybody needs to hear this. You ready?
Capstone, I should also mention that if the War Cleric uses their Channel Divinity to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon, it doesn't require concentration.
Oh.
Did you catch that? Think that through one more time. Uh-huh. I've been waiting on this one for a while to say it, but it's true. Go for that one more time.
Appear in this book, we thought, oh, this is perfect for the War Domain Cleric as well.
Yeah.
Before we move on to their capstone,
Last
I should
time,
also
here it is,
mention
one last
that
time.
If the War Cleric uses their Channel Divinity to cast Shield of Faith or Spiritual Weapon, it doesn't require concentration.
Oh, nice.
And if you cast it, again, using your channel Divinity rather than a spell slot. So extra spicy.
Yeah.
Finally, Avatar of Battle even has been tweaked in that before you got resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, but only those damage types when dealt by non-magical weapons. We've removed that non-magical weapon part so that now you just simply gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
There was hope that they wouldn't have stuck with spiritual weapon being a bonus or being concentration. That was mentioned in one of the survey videos early on. I know, but people were just kind of holding out hope that maybe it wouldn't happen. As we've seen, there has been some pretty significant changes to a lot of these things from the Unearthed Arcana, right? So if you were like really hating on something or loving something from the Unearthed Arcana, there is still a chance that what you saw, even if it was Unearthed Arcana 7, that it would have been tweaked before the final product. So it confirmed, but still.
Damage, meaning that this new version of the War Cleric, more than ever before, will be able to, be this priest character who is throwing down in the middle of battle.
When you pre-order the digital physical bundle, you also get an
All right, so there we go. That is our coverage of the Cleric. Now, I would say, kind of like what we've seen with a lot of these things across the board, just pretty much general improvements on everything. Not expecting the change that we heard about potentially happening to the certain monsters being harmed by healing spells. Huge implications down the road if that is the case, which I really, really like. Everything is way stronger. War Domain, way stronger. Really digging on that a lot. So, yeah, but again, you heard it officially confirmed there. No more spiritual weapon plus spirit guardians. You'll have to pick, and we all know that once spirit guardians becomes an option, you're not gonna choose spiritual weapon anymore, right? That's just like spiritual weapon will be your option until you can take spirit guardians, and then you will probably always take spirit guardians because it's just generally a better spell in every way. Now, if you are the war domain, you can still do that. Right, you can still cast spiritual weapon non-concentration and keep up spirit guardians, and I believe spirit guardians is even one of the war domain's auto-prepared spells. So, I mean, you could do some wild stuff as the war domain, especially with the tweaks to adding Steel Wind Strike as a spell. Can you picture that? Like, think about that for a second, right? Bonus action, start by setting up your spiritual weapon using your channel Divinity, non-concentration. Then get out Spirit Guardians going. And then you could use, while Spirit Guardians is going, Steel Wind Strike to teleport around and hit somebody with an attack and pop off Spirit Guardians on them. And just pop around and trigger Steel Wind Strike and Spirit Guardians as you boop around the map. That's pretty wild. I really, really like that a lot. It almost makes me okay with Tempest Cleric not appearing in this book because of the tweaks to how good Light Domain and how good War Domain are. So I definitely enjoy that. Let's see, did they put out any articles yet? No, they have not released. I know they said they were going to do more articles later in the week, but I was just checking. We do not have a D&D Beyond article yet. We are still only up to the monk. They have not done those yet. Yeah, I am very happy with the cleric changes. It's just a general, in my opinion, spiritual weapon is a nerf. I don't think it was necessary to nerf spiritual weapon. I get it. I do. I don't think it was as bad. Like, it needed as much of a hit as, say, like Smites and Wild Shape did. I still don't love the Smite changes. I think the simplest way to do it would just be like Smite's only usable once per turn, right? I think that's you just build that into the feature. Because it is still wild to me that like with the Eldritch Smite option as a warlock, you could smite more than a paladin, but whatever. So that's fine. I think, but generally, I'm going to say the cleric just is a general improvement overall, and we have seen this with a handful of classes that were quite strong. Again, we were lamenting some of the stuff with the wizard yesterday a little bit when we were talking about sorcerer, which is another one of those classes that just got elevated a bunch in this. Wizard technically did as well, with the exception of signature spells only being spells that use an action as opposed to any spell. But for the most part, again, they kind of fall. Same thing with like fighter, right? Just improvements. Monk as well, right? Improvements, rogue too, across the board. Everything just boosted. And cleric, a class that didn't really need that, got the healing boost in general, which just there's one other spell they didn't talk about that I was hoping they would discuss. Unfortunately, we won't be able to talk about that till the end of the month unless they have another video about it. But again, a lot of boosted healing, which just helps the cleric in general. Again, as mentioned, the life domain cleric is just going to be ridiculous with its healing and possibly with its harming if healing does end up hurting negative energy plane characters. And then we have the bard coming tomorrow. So with the bard tomorrow, that will round out all of the classes. And I want to bring this up because I had a conversation with a friend last night, and several of them were just just telling me about a bunch of people who are unaware. Just as a reminder, I think everybody here probably knows, but I guess spread the word, folks, too, if you would, that there's still a large group of people out there that is thinking the artificer is coming in this book, and we all know it's not. We know that for a fact. But there is apparently a large subset of people that, like, I guess misconstrued when they had that one Unearthed Arcana that was like, yeah, the Artificer will be in the experts group, which obviously they ditched the concept of that groups in general. But, they said they were going to be in the expert group, but the fine print basically said whenever that releases. But I think a lot of people just missed that. And apparently, yeah, there are a ton of people out there that are really excited to see what the new Artificer is in the 2024 Player's Handbook, and they just are unaware that it ain't coming. So, yeah, spread the word for folks because, like, they're going to want to know about that so they're not just utterly disappointed when they're looking for it. Yes, Artificer absolutely needs a revamp. There is no doubt in my mind that is true. I agree. That is the one of the biggest selling points if you decide to go with a Player's Handbook 2 option. I've talked about this in the past where I was saying, like, if you really want to sell books post this, the first thing you should do is release a Player's Handbook 2, and inside the Player's Handbook 2 is the Artificer, fully revamped. Maybe even a new subclass for the Artificer would be cool. Give it 5. All of the subclasses that haven't been released in the Player's Handbook, update them to be, or whatever you want to do with them. Maybe some of them need to combine the Undead and Undying Warlock. Maybe you could combine whatever it is. Right, get all the subclasses that haven't been released, all the species that weren't updated, and any of the spells that didn't make it into the final 2024 Player's Handbook. And you just combine that all. You really have to do minimal work because a lot of the core stuff is already done. Some of these are just small tweaks. The spells might even be just direct port over. And then, a little bit of work on the subclasses, but a lot of the design's already been done. You combine that with an updated version of the Artificer, call it Player's Handbook 2. Again, ditch the wild naming convention of it has to feel like something that could be found in the world. Player's Handbook 2, put all that stuff in it. It will 100% sell books, guaranteed. I will absolutely tell WotC that when I go to Gen Con. I don't know what pull my word has, but I will absolutely bring that up to them. at Gen Con. I know a handful of people at WotC now that I've met over the years. Several of them know me because they either watch these videos or what have you. They should release the Artificer, the Mystic, and additional PHB. I don't think they're going to do the Mystic. They tried the Mystic like 3 or 4 times and they never landed on it. I do think the Artificer should be updated in a future book. I would love another base class as well, with the concept of talking about the Mystic. But yes, Cleric video is over. Friday is the new dragon art reveal, I believe. So tomorrow is the Bard, and Friday, my birthday, is the art. I think it's the new dragon art reveal. So we've seen a handful of the different dragons like in smatterings here and there, and like they'll show it in like a background image or something like that. But I'm hoping they're going to give us this like, here is the definitive art, like concept art piece of all of the dragons. That would be pretty cool to see. No, Dance Bard is coming. You'll see tomorrow. My 25th, yeah. Add 13 to that, but yeah. So yeah, I do think where they landed, because they were trying to deal. So I'll be honest, I never really liked psionics myself too much. Coming from like a 3-5 background, I just like it. I just didn't have the time to, and maybe I just didn't give it a fair shake. That might be on me, to really like wrap my head around the way psionics worked, because the way they did it was all point systems, right? You had psi points, and that's kind of what you used. It was kind of like the alternative spell points rules. You would use these to kind of use your abilities. And to me, it just kind of felt a little clunky, to be honest. So I think where they landed is like what they have for things like the Psi-Knight and the Soul Knife, where like they have these psi dice or whatever they're called. Right, you get a certain number of psionic energy dice, and it is equal to twice your proficiency bonus, and it starts off as a d6 and it scales over time. And that's going to be the kind of way that they handle psionics, I think, going forward, right? Because I would say like the Great Old One and the Aberrant Mind Sorcerer are, I guess, in theory, psionic classes, but they don't really have that like psionic essence, if you will, that like the old psionic classes did. So my thoughts are what they're going to do is, if they're going to try to attempt to do more what's called more psionic subclasses, and I think that that's likely what we'll end up seeing in place of something like a mystic subclass. We'll see more psionic, or mystic class rather, we'll see more psionic style subclasses arrive, right? Where you'll see like a psionic barbarian, right? Something like that. And I hope that they continue to use this sort of psionic energy dice concept that they've established for the fighter and the rogue. I think that's the closest, like that's a happy medium of not quite doing psi points, but not quite just doing something like the Great Old One, where it just like is vaguely tied to a similar thing, but it's just still its own class. You give them this psionic energy dice as a mechanic, and then like all of their abilities are powered off of that. And they did give a variety of those, right? I mean, for those of you who don't remember, let's go ahead and pull up this here, right? Here is the Psi-Knight, right? So here was this, again, the psionic energy dice. And right at the start, you could use it for different things. You could expend one to reduce the damage taken by the die roll plus your intelligence modifier. You could choose to do a psionic strike, which is when you deal damage with a weapon. Do a psionic energy dice plus your intelligence modifier, increase the damage. Or expend a use to move an object. And then at level 7, you got additional abilities, right? As a bonus action, you could use gain a flying speed equal to twice your movement speed, and you had it unless you expend a die to get it back. Telekinetic thrust was a shove ability, and this one you could just when you use your psionic strike from up above to deal extra damage, you could also shove. And then I think the rest of these were basically they didn't tap into your psionic energy dice too much. They just gave you the opportunity to expend excuse me, expend the dice to get access to these features again. And I think that was pretty strong. And if we were to go look at the Soul Knife Rogue, again, we have the same thing. We have Side Bolstered Knack, which is when you make an ability check with a skill or a tool, you could spend the psionic die to add to it. Or Psychic Whispers, choose a number of creatures you could see, then roll a psionic energy die for the number of hours equal to the number rolled. They can speak telepathically with you. And then obviously you had your Psychic Blades feature, which was not necessarily tied to the Soul Energy dice, or Psionic Energy dice. But level 6, or 9 rather, you had Soul Blades, right? If you make an attack roll with your Psychic Blades and miss, you can roll a Psionic Energy die, add the number rolled to the attack, possibly turning it into a hit. Or as a bonus action, you could expend 1 die to teleport a number of feet equal 10 times the roll. So that was kind of giving you that. I keep seeing this concept of Tasha's Mind Whip. I think it's just you who keeps asking about if Tasha's Mind Whip is in is in the player's handbook. What I'll say, without defining anything one way or another, is several spells from like Xanathar's and Tasha's made their way in. It is not the full list, I will tell you that up front. Several things that I thought were a lot more not necessarily iconic, but were like did not make it. Now there are also some new spells, right? There's at least one new spell that I can think of that is I haven't seen it anywhere. I don't even think it was in the Unearthed Arcana. It was like a brand new spell. It kind of caught me off guard. As I've said, several spells shifted to a bonus action, a lot more of like the utility style spells. Ones that would like give you a benefit or some sort of ongoing effect have shifted to a bonus action, which is kind of nice. So I appreciate that as well. And unfortunately, though, I think what I'd say is I think not all, but a lot of like the elemental style spells that came in, was it Xanathar's? A lot of those didn't end up making the cut. More so Tasha's Cauldron spells ended up making it in than a lot. Like I think most of the cantrips arrived, but not all of the spells. But anyway, like I was saying, as you can see with these, the Soul Knife and the Psi-Knight, that's the psionic energy dice concept. Is how I think you're going to handle psionics going forward. Is, if you're going to just add new subclasses, don't add a full class. We need another non-magic base class. I don't know what they would do. Like what you would tap into. So this is something that and this is a self-imposed thing that I've seen in more recent years. Because remember, in older editions, base classes could be anything. And like when you had the concept of like prestige classes, you could do more specific base classes because the prestige classes would allow for the variability, right? Like Hexblade was a base class, Samurai was a base class, Scout was a base class, like all this kind of stuff. But I find myself now looking at a lot of stuff and saying, what is something that hasn't been done or captured in an existing class or subclass? So I would say the Artificer is one, the sort of tech-based, like we're talking like archetypes of characters as far as classes that would need to exist. I'd say because of the fact that we have psionic subclasses, I think you could ditch the concept of a psionic full class. I do think like the tech-based user of magic and arcano-mechanical stuff, as in the artificer, that is something we don't have currently, and nothing can really replicate that. So that makes sense to be a standalone. I still stand by necromancer or a summoning class for sure, right? We don't really have a great class that can do that. So that would either be like the necromancer by itself, or just some kind of summoner of some kind would be something also that we don't really have a niche that's filled by that. But that's kind of where I'm at as far as like new, if we're going to do more new base classes. Let's see. The knight class from 3.5. Yeah, the knight class is good. The closest thing we really have to that is the cavalier fighter right now. Battle medic, non-magic healer. It's a cool concept. I think that could fit more as like a fighter subclass, the battle medic, not necessarily a full-blown class. Tamer base class. Yeah, right. I think a summoner of some kind would definitely be the way to go. Shepherd Druid was the closest thing we kind of had more so, but we didn't get that. Obviously, didn't get isn't one of the ones they chose for the 2024 Players Handbook. So, Artificer could be a wizard subclass. I agree. That's actually how it started. All the way back at the first Unearthed Arcana ever released for 5th edition, the Artificer was a wizard subclass. So the Blood Hunter, yeah, I don't feel like the Blood Hunter, and maybe I'll get a lot of hate for this. I like it. I've played one actually. So in a level like 15 campaign. So I know quite a bit about the Blood Hunter. Granted, it was the old version of the Blood Hunter. I never really got to play since he did the major overhaul to it. But I don't know if the Blood Hunter is unique enough. I mean, it is unique enough in that it has its own identity, which is more so than you could say for some things. It has an identity. But I also feel like the Blood Hunter could have been a Warlock subclass or a Fighter subclass, or Paladin subclass. Maybe not Paladin, but you know what I mean. It could be a Rogue subclass, maybe. So like it's fine. You could pay like if you want to pay him, buy him out, and make that a base class, that's fine. Basically, so many people consider the Blood Hunter as like a guaranteed base class just because it came from Critical Role and it's available on D&D Beyond. Many people just assume and just consider it to be like the 13th or 14th base class, but yeah. Gunner, yeah, I mean, the fact that they added pistols and muskets to the base player's handbook list of options makes like the gunslinger, not saying that you couldn't have a gunslinger, but like you don't need to have a gunslinger specifically for the purposes of adding firearms to your game, you know? Yeah, so anyway, so I said I was going to talk about like life stuff real quick. So, just as a heads up for people that were curious, some people were asking what's going on. So, I may be on night shifts again. The weather is supposed to start hitting my area right about now. So, depending on how things go over the next 5-6 hours, I may be on a night shift tonight. If not, then I will be live on Twitch tonight streaming Phandelver and Below the Shattered Obelisk. But I did hear back from the shop on what's wrong with my car, and they flat out were like, do not drive it. It is unsafe to drive. And the amount of repairs it would cost to fix it. Now, I'm not saying that I couldn't buy those parts individually and fix them myself. I also kind of just don't want to do that in 90-degree heat. But the amount of it would cost to do the repairs on my car would be more than the car's current value. So I think that's probably out the case or out the window. I just didn't anticipate spending like 30 grand to buy a new car right now. Not to say that I'm not going to do it. It was just not part of my planned expenses, but now I'm looking at buying a new car. So basically like tomorrow, like pulling the trigger on a new car. Again, was not planned. But yeah. I think the musket and the pistol that exist in basically are this what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana. There's a loading feature, like a D10, a D12, and then they have whatever the distance they have. Let's see if we can put that in the most recent one. The car that broke down is 9 years old. It was 2015. 170,000 miles. Although the transmission is brand new because the transmission blew on it years ago. So I had that replaced. And when I say years ago, I mean like 2 years ago. Here. Musket is a D12 piercing damage. Has a range of 4120. The slow mastery is the loading property and it's two-handed. The pistol is a D10, 3090, loading, and the Vex property. I do still think it's funny that the longbow has significantly longer range than the musket. Now, also, I don't know if you've ever taken a look to see how far 600 feet is. It is not easy to see something 600 feet away. Because that's 200 yards. So that's pretty far. Now, the fact that the musket has shorter range, honestly, I feel like the musket should have more range if the pistol's going to be 3090, and this is just based on personal experience. As a avid, muzzleloader shooter of many, many years, I've taken shots with a muzzleloader and hit accurately out to 100 yards. So you could, I mean, not that this is D&D, so it is whatever it is. But I've taken shots with a muzzleloader out to 100 yards with accuracy. We're dealing in a D&D, like you're just increasing the powder load to hit that distance realistically. But that's no, we're not really dealing with that here. So I do think you could jack up the musket range maybe to like 8320. Feels like a more reasonable range for the musket. I'd still keep the 3090 on the pistol. I'm okay with that. That kind of, although if a blowgun has 25-100, I feel like the pistol could probably at least get 25-100. Or the hand crossbow is 30-120. So maybe that's what I would do. If I was going to make any homebrew tweaks to the firearms, I would make the musket 83-20 and the pistol 30-120. That would just be like small little tweaks that I would make, just trying to be more realistic. Now, I don't know. We could be talking flintlock muskets here or flintlock pistols. In that case, who knows, right? You might have a hang fire and you sit there and you click and then you're like, oh, I guess it didn't go off. And then you're like, all right, well, maybe we'll switch over to cap locks. But correct, no battle map is 600 feet. There's actually a really cool TikTok I saw where somebody was measuring out the ranges of like spells and stuff to showcase how far, and to see the guy who's walking with like the measuring wheel out to 600 feet, and to recognize that with like certain spell and feat combinations, you could have like, I think an Eldritch Blast that's like at 1200 feet. That's like a speck on the horizon, depending where you're at. The fact that you could see that, let alone hit with no disadvantage, is kind of wild. So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter that you don't necessarily have a rifled barrel here. I mean, I've shot smoothbore rifles too. I mean, you're shooting a ball out of it. The rifling does help, right, to cut the grooves as you're, firing this out. But I've shot smoothbores, and it's, my mom used to smoothbore in all of our shooting competitions, and she wasn't far out of the realm of accuracy of anybody else. When it's a round ball, right? You're shooting a round ball. It's not like no one's shooting like cartridges. You could with more modern muzzle loaders, but none of us are shooting those. So, um, yeah. Yeah, I mean, musket is a loose term. I feel like that's the other thing. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I could hit an accurate bow shot 200 yards. Yeah, maybe. But with disadvantage, I feel like I'd give myself disadvantage at that point. That's a long shot, guys, for the longbow. I don't know. Either way, we could sit here and lament weapon. There's so many people could tell you many different things. Like there are a lot of people, I'm sure, who are melee weapon experts that would also argue about a bunch of this kind of stuff. So I also still feel like I think the whip is still maintained at a D4, and I feel like the whip should be a D6. I don't know. I just feel like that, but either way. Yeah, I guess you're right, Zeal, right? Anything past 300 feet might as well be infinite in the terms of D&D when you're looking at that kind of stuff. That is true. There are very rare situations where you find yourself at a range of more than 300 feet with the ability to actually sling stuff. So I get that. D&D technology canonically the late 1400s. I don't think they actually have a official thing because I don't know if you go with like super old school D&D or especially even like the Forgotten Realms, like Earth existed in the Forgotten Realms. There was like a point where all of the Earth deities joined the Forgotten Realms. It's like the lore is funky. So depending, I mean, I know like 1400s is like the Dale Reckoning calendar is in the 1400s, but I don't know if they have a specific time frame for what the canonical like real world timeline is of the D&D world. So they did not, it doesn't look like they included scythes, which is a travesty in my opinion. You know who did include scythes though? Tales of the Valiant included scythes in theirs, and they do 2d4, which is what I've always wanted. Oh, thank you, Dragon in the West. You're right. It could just be smoothbore, but either way, thank you for the money. I will and the super chat. I appreciate that. I'll give you a heart here as well. Definitely appreciate that. I think I'm gonna buy a truck, and I absolutely think I'm gonna paint it orange and slap a big old Nerd Immersion logo right on the front of the hood. Because that's the kind of shit that I do. The amount of stupid shit I've thrown my logo on, just because I can, like making the coffee mugs, right? Like doing this. That's a thing. Here is it. Here we go. Making coffee mugs with my logo on it. I don't know if I've ever shown you guys that the landing at the top of the stairs when you come down into the basement, I mosaic tiled that. I think I might have at some point. I mosaic tiled that with black and orange tiles to tile in my logo on that. Because, I don't know. I just from my nuts. So, no, definitely not a Cybertruck. Tattoo of my logo, I have not gone that far. But I also don't have any tattoos. So I feel like it would be a little self-centered to have my first tattoo ever be a tattoo of my own logo. Um, so literally branding myself. I guess I would always be branding if I slapped my own logo on myself. Uh, tattoo, yeah, temporary tattoos. I bet you I could probably find somebody that would do temporary nerd immersion tattoos. I could probably figure that out. For those of you wondering about the truck, I think I'm leaning towards the Ford Maverick at the moment. I'm leaning towards the Maverick just because it's like the smaller form factor. It's got like a better gas mileage because, I do a fair bit of driving. So better gas mileage will help me in the long run. And the price is it's just a smaller, more like I was always a huge fan of the Ford Ranger. That was like my favorite truck. And then the new Ford Ranger is basically just an F-150, so I don't know why they still kept it the way they did. So the Maverick is more akin to the OG Ranger, in like pricing and like size. So it was a good toss up between the Maverick and like an F-150 or a Tacoma. And I think I've kind of landed on the Maverick. And I also found out that my work has like a discount program with Ford. So we're definitely leaning more to Ford for sure now because of the fact that we can get a discount on stuff just buying it like with a pin number that I get through work. So yeah, you're right. The logo does make sense. If I was gonna get a tattoo, it would be something that I could justify. I could justify getting a tattoo of my logo. But I don't know what I would get. I don't know like where I would get it. And I want to have to do like I want to do a cool thing with it. Like I wouldn't want to just get like the logo on my arm. I'd want to get like a cooler version of it. But I also feel like once I pop that cork due to like my obsessive nature with a variety of things, because when I get on a kick for something, I go hard. So I feel like if I were to get a tattoo, then all of a sudden it'll be very shortly before I'm like fully sleeved up, Um, I imagine that you'll actually be one of the rare people who uses the truck bed. Yes, I would. I do a lot of home improvement and like woodworking, so I would absolutely use the bed. That's the only downside to the Maverick is the shorter truck bed, but either way. Yeah, you could expand off the logo and create a style around it. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Kind of like it's a poor example, but like how like the D&D has like the ampersand and they've done all like the cool like iterations of what the ampersand actually looks like. Something kind of like a stylized version of my logo like that. I do love flumps. I don't think I could get a flump tattoo though. You know what? If I played in a game where like flumps were super important, like or was like a key NPC or something, then I'd like consider getting a flump tattoo. I also like if I had like a really like at Fandelver and below, for example. Like if this game goes as long as I want it to, and like we get to do all the things that we want to do, and it ends, like commemorative tattoos seem like a cool thing to me. To get like if everybody got like a similar tattoo or like the same tattoo as like a commemoration of like we did it. This is like took us 2 years and we finally played through it, and some of the best memories we have is from this campaign. I'd be down for that. More so than like, and not that I succumb to peer pressure often, but if it's like everybody's doing it kind of a thing, like all right, I might jump on board for that. But like I have no desire to get tattoos. Like when I was younger, I did. I really wanted a Ninja Turtle tattoo when I was in high school. Because I've always been a huge Ninja Turtle fan, but they were currently having like the 2002, 2003 like revival, so I got like hardcore back into Ninja Turtles. So I really wanted to get a Ninja Turtle tattoo. And then now obviously I'm super, not that I haven't always been, but I'm really into Dungeons and Dragons, so there's an opportunity for that. But there's just the problem is also like I'm into so many things that like if I were to try to like do justice by all of the things that I like, I'd be like fully sleeved up. Flump back tattoo. Save getting a tattoo for some future fundraising live stream. You know what? You're right. That's how you do it. You want to get a tattoo, you do a live stream and say, hey, if we raise X amount of money, I'll get this tattoo. That's how you do it. That's the content creator influencer mentality. That's how you do it. We got our shit together, commemorative tattoo. That'd be wild. Oh boy. So, yeah. Long story short, we'll be back here with the Bard tomorrow and the Dragons on Friday for my birthday. I'll probably like post a link at some point because people always ask about like if people are like, do not 100% do not ever feel obligated. But sometimes people do ask about like, hey, if I wanted to get you like something to show support or like to say happy birthday, like how do I do that? And like I could post a link to like Throne and like Amazon, like wish lists if people are interested. I will likely end up doing that, but I do not expect or anticipate or want anybody to do that. You guys have your own stuff going on. If people feel like they really want to support me in some way, that's totally cool. I do not want people to feel obligated because I do recognize that I feel like some people put stuff out there and there is like a hidden obligation that they're like asking for it. And I'm very much not. I'm in a pretty good spot. So I don't need it, but if people want to support in some way, I appreciate it. You got your viewership really is enough for me. Coming out, hanging out here, chatting, liking the videos, subscribing, telling your friends. That really is what, that's one of the best things people can do. I really appreciate that. So that's really all I need, but sometimes people feel the need to go above and beyond, and it is what it is. Yeah, you could always buy merch and gift it to somebody else. Working on some other merch designs. I've had some thoughts. Also had some really cool conversations about some big, potentially really big future endeavors last night. Like some stuff really started to click as to like some big projects to work on. And if they have the potential to do what I think, like this could be a game changer job wise. Like this could be a career if it goes well, and like could just be pretty big. So I'm hopeful that this gets off the ground, this project idea, which it's too early to say anything about it, but so hopefully that pans out. And yeah, if I buy a new car, I was gonna rent a car to drive to Gen Con anyway, since my car was kind of giving me some issues. But I guess if I just go buy a new car, then I won't have to worry about it. So yeah. I think I'm going to probably bring this to a close. I hope to see you all over on Twitch this evening, meaning that my works got canceled for the day, and I just kind of got to hang out and wait for a night shift that never happened. Because I also don't really want to have to work on my birthday on Friday, but we'll see where that takes us. I've also been trying to figure out what the hell I want to do for my birthday. My wife keeps asking me, and I keep not having an idea of what I want to do for it. Usually I'm like, oh, I would just want this. Like I want to get a better monitor. I want to get like a bigger monitor here. And like I redid my setup recently. But I'm only on 2 monitors and I want a third. So I'm like, I think I'm going to put the next one up above so that like when I'm looking, it's just still in eye line, So that's a thing I'm looking to do. But I think, and she's like, what do you want for dinner? And it's a whole thing. So I think I might just want to have all of the dumplings and try to like live my best Kung Fu Panda life and just eat an exorbitant amount of dumplings for my birthday. That might be a fun thing. So maybe I'll do that. But it's also like it's after the 4th of July, right? So it's basically spooky season now. And that's my whole jam. I love Halloween and the fall. You've seen how many flannels I wear. Like the fall is my time. So I'm excited. I really would love this hot weather to take a break because I'm a little sick of this 90-degree bullshit. I guess I understand that we're in July, but I feel like we've been in like heat waves too often. But I know that's just kind of how things are trending. So, I'm a total basic bitch. I love me pumpkin spice everything. Like, I'll admit it. I have no qualms about who I am. I'm very secure in, my Tedness and my basicness. Give me that pumpkin spice latte. Give me all of the fall leaves and the nice cup of coffee and the sitting outside in the warm, brisk air. Yeah, that's my jam. Ugh. Cannot wait. And to have this deck, definitely finished by then. To be able to just sit out on that like back porch in the fall, watch the leaves change. That's gonna be where it's at. Yeah, dude, I can't even imagine. I was talking to some friends recently who are in Seattle, and they're like, it's like 90 degrees in Seattle, and they're like, yo, we were supposed to be the cool, windy, rainy area, so nobody in Seattle has like air conditioning because it never gets hot, or it's not supposed to get hot up there. So, yeah. That's actually why my character that I play in my Thursday night Vecna Eve of Ruin game that I play over on Captain Robert's channel. I was originally toying around with the concept of a autumn like themed like School of Automancy wizard. Just to like be able to have and like be based all around like cool fall breezes and like wind and like leaf generating like leaves like little tornadoes and stuff. So that was I was toying with that for a while. So I thought that would have been a cool one. I think I still have the proposed subclass written up somewhere. I had like a thing where basically like you could cast fog cloud rather. But instead of fog, it was a swirling like maelstrom of leaves. But the benefit it was I think the level 6 class feature was you could make the fog cloud, but instead it's leaves. But the benefit of this fog cloud is that you and your allies could see out of it, so you could make the big fog cloud of swirling leaves to obscure you from enemies, but you guys could all see out of it. Like that was one of the class features. I think it had I don't remember all the other stuff. Oh, I had like a Mega Man 2 style like leaf shield that would like rotate around you. That you could generate that would like allow you to take less, or you could basically almost like a life or light domain cleric, like a warding flare, where you could like shoot it off to like block stuff for other people. So I had a couple of options. I had the Geomancy, I had an Automancy, and I had what I was calling Ambermancy, which was based all around like amber, the gemstone, and it was a lot of slowing effects, right? Multiple abilities to slow and like encase people in amber and stuff. Playing around with a lot of options. Pumpkin sense, yeah, exactly. Oh, that should have been either a spell or one of the abilities to call it pumpkin spice, and basically have like Green Goblin pumpkin bombs or something like that. That would have been funny. I didn't even think of that. That's why I need to come in and chat to you guys when I start designing subclasses for things, because you guys always have good ideas. Maybe someday I'll release them. I will eventually once I finalize the Geomancy one that I'm actually playing, because I had some stuff and then I tweaked it because I was never using it. And I really like where I've landed now. I'm just working on the level 14 feature because I currently have geomancy set that the level 14 feature is like you can make like an earthquake, and it's like a once per long rest, like AoE knockdown and bludgeoning damage spell, or like ability. It's not a spell. And I'm like, maybe I don't want to do like a one-off attack. Maybe I want to just do like more passive stuff. So I really like some of the stuff I've done with it so far, like Tremor Sense and, resisting the ability to push to knock down. And I did a whole tweak to Melf's Minute Meteors, like that spell, as like as a signature spell, like being able to cast it and having it be not concentration. And then the ability while you have multiple meteors orbiting you, it increases your AC, but you could also use them as a reaction to when somebody takes damage from an attack, like fling the meteor over to like lessen the damage. So you would roll the Mel's Minute Meteor, which is 2d6, and add your intelligence modifier and cut the damage by that amount, stuff like that. And then cast like an altered version of Meld into Stone that lets you move while you're in there. Normally you wouldn't be able to see, but you have Tremor Sense, so you can see. I've been toying with like, critical hits become normal hits, or like resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage. Just trying to come up with like a cool thing that I like, trying to tap into a variety of that kind of a concept. The only thing that bums me out is there's such a severe lack of earth spells, like the things that do like bludgeoning damage, which is why I mentioned one of the other streams that I was like feeling that like bleed should be a condition, like basically an ongoing damage condition, where you hit somebody with it's in Baldur's Gate, and like they basically take a D4 damage at the start of their turns unless they stop it. So you could do like splintering kind of shards, and that would be like a way to deal, give earth damage its own thing, and maybe that would just be, it kind of has the ability to inflict bleed. I don't know. I toyed with the concept of magic stone as an option, but yeah. Well, I think I'm probably going to call it quits here, folks. This was a really fun stream. Thank you all for hanging out. Thank you everybody who was, donating via Super Chat. I appreciate that. We'll be back here tomorrow. I'm not sure the exact time. It might be right on time again for the Bard reveal. Or it might be a little bit later, depending on what work situates me at. And then Friday will be the Dragon reveal. It'll be a birthday stream. So yeah. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, just as a reminder, if you're going to be at Gen Con, I will be there. You can feel free to come say hi. I got to order some swag to have more stuff for when I get there. But I'm also going to I have so much stuff. Like, I don't have room to store all the cool things that people have been nice enough to hand over to me. So I think I'm going to just do like a bag of tricks at Gen Con and just bring like a fat stack of like books and minis and crap to give away. And just be like, hey, it's 10 o'clock on Thursday. First person to find me, here's where I'm at. You get a draw from the bag of tricks, and like, here's a random supplement or something like that. Just to be like, hey, or maybe it's like, do you want minis, Cobalt Press, or other assorted 5e? You get to pick, and then just randomly pull something and say, here you go. Here's a copy of Tales of the Valiant or something, or here's a copy of, some other supplement. Here's a bunch of maps, whatever it is. So anyway, we'll do more videos as we get closer to Gen Con to let people know that I'll be there. And then obviously, again, we'll have all of our coverage of the Player's Handbook coming out starting on August 1st. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching.